Hi. So I was going to write about this morning, but honestly, I don't know how I would be able to fit this into a caption, a story, or a reel or anything like that. So I've decided that it's going to be best to talk about it. And I don't know how long this is going to go on for, because I just came out of a meditation and it was just like huge download of stuff that I really want to talk about and touch on about grief and suicide loss, and why I go to the depths that I do in terms of healing, and why my journeys include a lot of things like inner child work, shadow work, ancestral and generational trauma, connecting to our higher selves, bridging science and spirituality together, a trauma clearing, epigenetics, limiting beliefs. Like, there's so many things that have been compiled into these healing journeys, and which are so very different. And all of the modalities and everything are very, very different to the conventional path of healing. And, this is all just a mirror of everything that I did myself after my brother passed away, and the journey that I took, which was really extensive. And it took a very long time for me to figure all of these things out, for me to put everything together that I have. And one thing that I don't think I've really ever spoken about is why. Like, why have all of these extra modalities? Why am I looking at ancestral trauma clearing when my loved one just passed away by suicide? Why are we doing inner child work and so on? So I really wanted to talk about that, because it is really important that we are stepping outside of the parameters of 5 stages of grief, or the traditional kind of talking therapies and counselling that we're offered after we've lost someone tragically, especially if we are heavily traumatized people after this loss as well, which I was. So I'm going to talk from my own personal experience, and then obviously hope that you will take some nuggets from this and be able to kind of understand a little bit more about why all of these things have been compiled, and why I talk about breath work or meditation or hypnosis, hypnotherapy, the modalities as well, but backing the reason as to why they have been so helpful and beneficial for me in this time specific to trauma and to suicide loss, because these are tools that people use for breakups, for job losses, and for everything. But to really target all of these things for people that are so heavily traumatized is so important. When my brother passed away, Jack, to suicide in 2018, I was 30 years old. And so I thought I had it all together. I had my career, I had a business, I was already living overseas in Australia. And as a 30-year-old, I was doing really well. I thought I really knew myself. I had done some counselling and things before on, my mum didn't raise us, my dad did. And so I've never had that relationship with my mum before. That would always cause some issues coming up in relationships and some friendships and things like that, because I was inherently quite a dramatic person. I just assumed that was a part of my personality. But it wasn't. It was because I had learned as a child to become very dramatic and have to create a lot of noise and things like that to be noticed, and to have someone to get their attention and to show me love and things like that. So it was this learned behavior. They were some things that we touched on through counselling at the time when I went through it, about why was my family dynamic the way it was, why was I the way I was, and all this sort of stuff. And so then there was, when my brother passed away, sort of for the first 6 months, I was really just suffering the loss of my brother. Nothing else had really come into play yet. I wasn't asking the big questions at that time, who am I? What is life? What's my purpose? Why has this happened to me? And why has this happened to my brother? It wasn't so much that. It was just shock. Jack took his life, and how am I supposed to live with this much pain, this much trauma, and then also, how are we ever going to live without Jack? What does this mean for our family? And slowly things did start to really break down and fall apart long before they got any better. So initially I was in a lot of talking therapy. I had some trauma specialists and things like that, and I couldn't make any sense of any why all I could make sense of was just talking about the loss and the things that I was experiencing, but nothing deeper than that. It was always, how could I cope with my hallucinations and my seizures and my blackouts and things like that, and some tools and techniques. And also, for a big part of it, it was the 5 stages of grief, which I know were never meant to be for the purposes of people that were grieving after a loss. But it was strange because every grief counsellor I went to, that was the paradigm of healing, and that was kind of like the constraint of what we were in. So we would go through anger and bargaining and things like that. But again, that never really belonged to me, because things were a lot worse than anger, and what anger was doing to me was creating a lot more chaos and so on. So again, so that never really fit. And so what I've learned, my healing journey was very extensive. I never knew at the time what exactly I was embarking on. I just kind of followed the breadcrumbs, and everything started to kind of fall into place and make sense. But eventually, after kind of about 6 months, I think, that was when I really started to ask big questions, like, who am I? What is my purpose? What is life? I was instinctively looking for my brother in nature as well. So I had that knowing that he didn't die, that his body had left, yes, but that he wasn't dead. And so, I wasn't very, as a 30-year-old thinking that I completely knew myself. I also wasn't really very introspective, and I hadn't asked the big questions about life after death or spirit and afterlife and things like that. So all of these things started to form as well. And, I was having lots of really mystical experiences with Jack and spirit. I heard him, I saw him. I was lucid dreaming like I'd never experienced before. I was having a few out-of-body experiences, colour, numerology, signs, synchronicities, all of this sort of stuff. And it was just blowing my mind, because my mind couldn't comprehend. I was so traumatized, but yet at the same time, all of these other things were coming up. And so this is why I want to touch on the importance of going deeper than grief counselling, because yes, the loss first and foremost is the most painful thing for us to comprehend and to learn to live with and somehow move forward with it, with all of these things that are happening. But also it goes deeper than that about who we are, and the life that we've created, how we've got to this point. And really being in the present moment and actually looking at everything from your past and trying to really understand, well, how the fuck have I got here? What has happened? And that's when I changed my course of direction, and that's when I really went down finding energy healers and spiritual therapists and trauma specialists that would specialize in spirituality and energy and things like that. And so this is what I've created to give back to other people, because to be quite honest with you, I think the grief strategy and the system and what we're offered as a society is pretty crap, and that's just my experience, and also that's the experience of pretty much everyone that I work with. Otherwise they wouldn't come and work with me in the fashion that I work and what I offer. So first of all, we deal with grief, and so we've got the loss and we've got all of the pain and everything that the loss encompasses, and we're trying to come to terms with that. That's number one. But then we have our inner child inside of us that is absolutely screaming out for help. This little girl or this little boy inside of us is feeling isolated, feeling lonely, feeling wounded, doesn't know how to reach out for help, has learned all of these behaviors in the past. Like for me with my mum, having to cause so much drama and cause a scene and like really trying to get attention in all these different ways to be noticed, to be heard, to be held. But this wasn't 30-year-old Becky doing that. This wasn't me behaving in that way. It was the little girl inside of me that was like, I really, really need, I need so much more. I need nurturing, I need helping. The behaviors are coming out from the little girl that has done that her whole entire life. But all of a sudden, she's just now, it's like poking the bear. Perhaps I had these thoughts, feelings and behaviors for such a long time, but they were just running unconsciously. And now all of a sudden, the little girl is now running the show full time. And so now I'm starting to wonder, like, why is all my mum stuff coming up? Why am I dealing with my trauma from my childhood when I'm dealing with my brother's loss, this should be the thing that I'm dealing with. But no, I'm not, because all of a sudden I'm feeling all of these feelings and pain and anger and everything towards her, wanting to hurt her, wanting to see her suffer, wanting my mum to be miserable, like want so much focus and attention on my mum, and all of this just being like, I can't cope with how much I'm feeling and all of these emotions and everything towards my childhood. You know, why am I going back into my childhood so much, and hurting as a baby, as a little girl, when I'm now 30 dealing with my brother's loss? It doesn't make any sense. So now it's not just running unconsciously anymore, it's at the forefront of my mind. And we can kind of become a detective as well of the past, you know, when we've lost someone to suicide, like, was it me, was it them, was it this, was it that, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together to try and find out how on earth have I got here in this time and space of my life. You know, it doesn't equate, it doesn't add up, apart from the fact that it can, and it does, and you can make up your own conclusions as to how we got to the place that we got to. And this is what I wanted to find out. This is how I needed to understand what happened to my brother, and, you know, why is he in the position that he's in? You know, why is his physical body not here? And who am I? And why is my little girl crying out for help in my body, my younger self? So secondly, and we'll get on to that, like my conclusion of everything, and then why I'm so into natural healing. Okay, and then we've got the shadow side of self, shadow work. Going into shadow work with my therapist when I was over in Bali also felt a bit strange, because they're like, okay, we're going to work on the shame and the guilt and everything. And I thought, well, I don't want to work on shadow work. I don't understand. Is this really what I'm paying you for? You know, I want to talk about grief and my brother and his loss. But this completely was a part of the whole thing, because the shame and the guilt and everything had its own story to tell. All of these things that I'd been suppressing, that were in my shadow side, that I was too afraid of and didn't have the tools and the people to guide me into that place. So instead, I'm living and looking through life through the shadow of shame and of guilt and despair. You know, and what I learned was where all of these emotions came from. You know, why was I feeling so shameful? Why was I living through the lens of shame? What did shame do to me as a person? Because I'll tell you that shame was huge for me. Shame had my head like cowering down the entire time. I found it hard to make friends. I found it hard to bond with people because I was so scared for people to see me for what I had thought, I assumed that I'd done, you know, playing a part in my brother's passing. You know, I grew up with him my whole life, so surely I had such a huge part to play in his final decision of leaving. So shame was huge. Shame had me feeling like a failure, that I wasn't able to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve in life, that who was I anyway? I was an awful person. You know, guys going on dates, not even an option, because I was so shameful. I had this huge big like pot of tar inside my stomach that was like was causing so many physical manifestations. You know, I was so bloated, I was uncomfortable. I no matter how much exercise I did, how much little I ate or anything like that, it was just it was so apparent, my body just screaming out to me all the time. And, you know, my eyes, the life went out in my eyes looked bleak, they looked empty, they looked dead. And so I was really affected with things like that. Guilt as well, constantly having that pit of guilt inside my stomach. With guilt, I also always felt like I was sorry for absolutely everything. You know, when I was 30, I was like 10 men before my brother passed. You know, I could take on the world. I was achieving things really well with work, career, money, all sorts of stuff. But then as soon as his passing, I was like an ant. I was tiny. I was nothing. I just wanted to be squashed, and I could have been squashed easily. Someone could have made the smallest remarks to me and it would have affected me majorly, because I already felt so low anyway, and I felt so shameful and all of these things. So working with my shadow side was huge, and it was so liberating, because I really got to see the story behind them, that actually I got to see all the reasons why I felt these things, and then I got to understand them, but I got to release them as well and actually see the truth that, the silly arguments that I had with my brother and things like that actually weren't anything to be shameful of, because my truth and my understanding, what my body was saying, was that that was not the reason why he ended up passing and taking his life. It had nothing to do with it, but I needed to find a way to blame myself. And so it was perpetuating. It was really easy to lean into that place and create suffering for myself, because also I wanted to be identified with that suffering, because I wanted to feel that blame or that shame, because, I was identifying with the pain of losing my brother that way. So shadow work is so, so, so important. And one of the key elements at working through grief, I found, because that was where true growth started to change, and like big fundamental changes started to happen when I worked with all of those things that I'd been suppressing, denying and pushing away. And so shadow work, 100%. Okay, and then we had generational trauma clearing, ancestral trauma. Again, I was like, why is my nan getting involved in this? Why is my granddad getting involved in this? And my mum and my dad, why am I clearing for them? And actually working with epigenetics, you can find loads of good things through Bruce Lipton on this. And also we hold up to 14 generations worth of trauma within our cells. So even as we're born through the mum in the womb, all of her trauma, her family's trauma, our grandma's trauma, so all of this through war, famine, poverty, all of these stories and all of this trauma builds up within our bodies. And so we're unconsciously carrying this around. It doesn't even have to go back that far, but we had mental health and we had suicide loss run in my family. So I don't know how old I was when I heard the first time that, oh yeah, mental health, depression runs in the family, anxiety runs in the family, and Uncle Gary took his life, and so suicide runs in the family, and we've had a few other members of our family attempt to take their life as well. So here we are now living within this story, and science now proves that thought creates reality. And so if we're telling ourselves all the time that we live with trauma, with depression, anxiety and suicide, it's not the driving force. Let's say that that's the reason why in that time my brother took his life, but it definitely was an element of, because this is something that runs in the family and, it's genetic. So that's another thing. So actually working through that, because now, there's me and that's my story. This has now directed me, impacted me, like to my brother, my blood, the other half of me, the boy version of me. So now this is very much alive in my cells, my DNA, my tissues, my fascia, my nervous system. So now we have suicide ringing in my head. Is it me? Will it be my children? Will it be my dad? Who's next? And so this story became very much a driving force of my life for a long time as well, until we did generational trauma clearing, where you become the chain breaker. So where you actually clear this trauma from your body, this narrative, this story that then later creates your belief or your realities. So this was also a huge part of my healing, to not only clear this from me, but to clear this also from my family too. So when I now go on and have children, if I go on and have kids in the future, that this isn't a narrative, this isn't trauma that's going to be carried in my womb to my babies, and to my babies come out and this be a narrative and a story within them. I can only hope, and I can only do as much work as I know, with the level of consciousness that I have, to really try and clear that slate, so that there is that fresh start and there is that new beginning. And so generational and ancestral trauma clearing, again, is so important to actually alter and remove all of this from your bodies as well. Not just for the people that are behind us, but for the people in the future generations, for our families. Because we know that, if you're heavily traumatized and you haven't cleared that, and then you have younger people in your families, that they unconsciously 100% are going to pick up on that and learn from your behaviors and mirror from your behaviors. If I look at that 30-year-old version of myself that was so heavily traumatized, and then I continued to parent and, love and nurture from that environment, I know that that's not going to be as healthy as what it would be today. For me to be aware and conscious and very much knowing how to release all of this from my body is only going to make me a far more empowered and better parent, because I know that I'm doing the best and giving them the best environment, that I'm not allowing my trauma to run through me, through to them. So I give them the best opportunity in their life as well. And so that this breaks the cycle and this breaks the link within my family name and lineage. So another one was, another part is like bridging science and spirituality together, which is strange in grief to bring that into it. But when we're asking the big questions of where is my loved one? So by you doing that, you already know that their physical body has gone, yeah, but you feel that energy around you. Perhaps you also are experiencing like signs, synchronicities, energy. You might be like really living hyper alert from that sixth sense, and so you can really feel them around, sense them, smell them, blocks of thought, ideas, visions, all sorts of things. And these are possible for absolutely everybody, because we all have the sixth sense, and it's just like training another muscle. And so for me, yeah, that was huge. So I wanted to understand about energy. And that opened up like a whole kind of like opportunity of growth for me as well with my own energy. But I wanted to learn about energy, consciousness, awareness, the afterlife, spiritual texts, spiritual scriptures, ancient spirituality and healing tools and things like that. And so like, how does quantum physics, now modern day science, bridge with spirituality? And it's actually what the ancients have known all along, and what most religious scripts will tell us about life and the Holy Spirit and reincarnation, or there's all different ways of them kind of like regurgitating a very similar thing. And so for me, I really needed to lean into that so I could understand what happens to the soul, the spirit, the consciousness after a physical death. And also that really leads into you. So now I've just found out that you don't die completely. So what does this mean for me? Who am I? What's my history? Like, what's my purpose? What's my mission in life? Like, did I know my brother before? Did we sign a karma contract? How did everything lead to this? What agreement did we make, if we made an agreement? So all of these things just blew my mind, and it started to really open up to, well, what happens in life after death? Why did I choose this life? When you start asking those questions, why did I choose this life? Okay, well, that's huge. Like, what do I do with this life then? Because now I don't just want to go and do my 9 to 5 job anymore. I really want to stand for something in this very short window of life that we have as we know it, as us. So yeah, that was a whole thing. So bridging this together, and also like lessening the sense of separation between you and your loved one. So like my brother and I, because my life was going to immensely suffer to the point that I'm not sure I was going to last much longer, because I was in so much pain. But then actually finding him again in spirit was a new task, because it was like, right, he can't speak to me in language as we know it, so I need to learn how to communicate with him. So now I have this new full-time job kind of thing going on, where it's like this hobby to start with, learning how to communicate. So most of this was done through meditation. A lot of this is done through mindfulness, because you really want to make sure that your mind is creating the reality that you want. So you really need to start training your mind in a certain way to actually be able to develop these skills that you're born with. So that was that. So all of a sudden now I'm having to really meditate, to go into a different brainwave state, to drop into my body, to have myself surrender and hyper alert to energy, and learning the invisible language of spirit and the universe. And so there's a huge science behind all of this. So then we get into manifestation. Well, we now know that our thoughts create our reality. And so you really need to be careful, I need to be careful about what it is that I'm trying to create, alongside trying to obviously bond with my brother, my guides, angels, the afterlife, all of this thing, so that we're working as this full team together. So now what I'm noticing is, through all of this, that I'm having to really clear all of this energy from my body to heighten my vibration so I can connect with my brother. So then we lean into the body work. So the body work is where the trauma lives within our bodies. It doesn't live in our minds. So when we go to a grief counselor and we're like, just talking, if we're just talking, we're only going to make a very tiny amount of change, which are just still going to be these looping thoughts unless we release the energy. And the energy and the trauma and the pain lives within the body. The grief lives within the body. And so when we start to heal the body, we heal the mind. And when we heal the mind, we become more present, more conscious, more aware, more alert. We become more strong, more magnetic. We're co-creating with the universe and our loved ones in spirit. So now we're getting more synchronicities, more serendipities, more signs, more breadcrumbs to follow. Life's becoming more magical, mystical. This path of suffering now is starting to offer light in it. So you're starting to find all these other ways. So all the physical manifestations that we get, fatigue, exhaustion, bad back, tiredness, panic attacks, hair loss, weight loss, bloating, weight gain, depression, anxiety, all of this starts to shift because we're releasing the trauma from the body. Releasing the trauma from the body is now helping us physically, and our physical health is getting back on track. So this is where I now start to conclude in a wider space where I'm more aware and more alert. What happened to my brother? Why have I managed to now turn my life around significantly? What happened to my brother? And I start looking, I understand energy now. I understand healing from the body, meditation, mindfulness, breath work, healing tools, subconscious healing, trance work. All of this is all just done with your eyes closed through the body. This just goes far, far, far beyond talking. So now I'm looking at the truth. So I have the big pharmaceutical companies that have my brother on a cocktail of medications, opiate-based medications that completely rewired and refired his brain. And so that if he came off of these medications, he would go into psychosis. So my brother was literally losing his life to being completely drugged up to the eyeballs. So now I'm starting to look at the systems that are in place around me. Do I want to be a part of this? Do I feel like my healing needs to be based on a medication that's just going to help me with my symptoms, but not with the problem? The problem is all of the pain that's been living within my body that has a story. The environment has caused an energy and all of these emotions to be trapped within my body, which, you know, with a self-empowered approach, we can heal ourselves. So now I'm looking at the path my brother went down and I'm thinking, I don't want to go down that path. There is absolutely no way over my dead body am I taking any more of these medications when I saw the fate of my brother. And this is my truth, right? This is just me because this is how I lost my brother. So now I'm looking at that kind of thing and I'm thinking, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to take these medications and be, you know, have my issues solved like this when, you know, what I'm dealing with is something that, you know, if my brother and I knew what I know now and I could take him through this journey, I ultimately believe wholeheartedly that my brother would still be here, because what we're looking at is a lifetime of shadow work, of upbringing, of parenting, of society, of schooling, of the medications, of bullying, of absolutely everything that just is whole encompassing to take a person to that point. All of the experiences which are so completely unique to each person. And then what tools do we have at that time when we do start to get down a slippery slope? When we start to feel dark and the black cloud is coming over and we're feeling smothered and we're feeling trapped, or we feel like we can't have control over our lives. And this is where it's like, does a pill fix this? Sometimes in some cases it does, and I don't want to knock that for other people. Or is it the fact that we need to look at all these facets of ourselves and all of these the layers of ourselves and like what is going on inside? And so that's when my healing journey really started to think, yeah, I'm really on a really powerful path here. I'm really starting to turn my life around and I'm starting to understand my brother. But now I'm communicating with my brother because now my energy is so high because I've been doing so much energy healing work that depression no longer lives in my body. Anxiety no longer lives here. My hair is growing back. My nails are growing back. I'm not having seizures, hallucinations. I'm no longer fatigued. I have energy. And so then now we're working on all the chakras. And so the biggest thing for me for the longest time was that my throat chakra was so completely blocked. I was in so much pain lived there. I wanted to talk about suicide. I wanted to help other suicide loss survivors. I wanted to share, like, come on guys, like this is what I'm doing. This might help you. I wanted to make change in this world, but it was like, I can't talk. I literally was so blocked. It was just so much pain living in my body. And it was like, how the hell am I ever going to bloody get rid of this? And so then when I started doing all of my clearing again, and then working with the chakras, and then allowing all of these energy blocks to just dissolve and thaw out and move, I breathed, I had new life in there. Finally, it was like, I can breathe. I know myself. My shame doesn't own me anymore. My inner child, I love my inner child. Like, I support her. I'm her mother. I'm her best friend. I'm her father. I'm her partner. Like, I am everything to that little girl that lives inside of me. She no longer has to create drama and noise and attention or anything through relationships, friendships, parenting, nothing like that to get attention. You know, she's cool. And so now all of a sudden, no one touches me. Nothing can touch me. I'm pretty much feeling quite invincible. I feel very empowered. I feel like I don't belong to a system, or the doctor can't tell me what to do, because I know what's best for me. I've already done it. I'm the proof in the pudding. I don't need that medication, thank you. And so now all of a sudden, I'm feeling like I can talk. And then you know what happened after that? Then I created healing journeys from doing years and years of studying and working with people in suicide loss and suicide prevention, that now I help hundreds of people heal. And that was something that was not possible for me years ago. And it's only something that's possible because I did all of this other work. Then we had all of the limiting beliefs and disempowering beliefs and unconscious programming. And this was like, oh, I don't know, like, you'll never get to uni, or, you know, you can't do this or you can't do that, or you've all of these stories from all over the world that I've been through, years and places and spaces and people. And so I have all these blocks. And so it's like, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? I feel trapped. I have this like self-imposed illusionary prison that I built myself in, and there's bars everywhere and I can't get past them. And so all of a sudden I'm doing all of this inner work to be like, why do I think this about myself? Why am I blocking this about myself? My ultimate goal here is to help bring suicide rates down. Why do I feel blocked to do it? This is nonsense. The job that I have at hand, the thing that I have created that I want to do more in the world, is within arm's reach, but I have all these niggly thoughts that are stopping me from doing it, these limiting beliefs that are holding me back. Why? And so they're nothing compared to the big job at hand, the thing that my soul and my heart is crying out for. So I'm like, oh, here we go again. So now I need to do all of the work on limiting beliefs and, you know, all of the disempowering thoughts that put me down, that say that I'm this, that I'm ugly, that I'm fat, that I'm horrible, that, you know, my voice is never going to be heard. There's people better than me. They have more followers than me. They should do it. They should do it. No, it's just nonsense. It's rubbish. None of that matters compared to the fact that my brother took his life, and that I really want to help create change in the world, because I think these silly things of myself. It's just ridiculous. So a huge part of this healing journey is really dismantling that and really unlearning how it is that we've been programmed, and how it is that we, these negative perpetuating thoughts that we think about ourselves, and really aligning with the truth and really aligning with our higher selves. And this means that, you know, you can wake up every day. You don't have to go into an hour's meditation every day to try and find yourself, to figure out who you are and what you need to do in this world. No. This can be done after you've done the work and you've really put a lot of this hard work in, after you've removed a lot of this stuff from your body. This really becomes a practice, and it's not something that you do, but it becomes who you are. So this is something where you can just sort of close your eyes 5-10 minutes with all the tools and modalities and things like that, the practices. And then it's like you find the truth, because the truth is so alive within your bodies that to connect to it is very easy. And so this kind of healing journey is very extensive, and I hope that you can understand maybe parts of it as to why, you know, that the inner child matters, the unconscious programming, your childhood, the ancestral trauma clearing, like connecting to us, our higher selves, to spirit, learning about our trauma and its effects, and then how we can spin that all around and then really try and make change in this world if we want to. So I am someone that, yes, was really like, give me, this is my fight. Like, you know, when my brother passed away, and I always get super itchy nose when he's around me as well. Yeah, all right, Jack. Anyway, so this is like Jack was the fire in my belly. This experience was really like my driving force to really try and make change in this world. Not everyone feels like that. You know, so please don't think, oh no, if I do this, I have to be like her. But, this is something that I'm going to do until I'm an old lady, until I die. And I'll die an old lady, very content and happy that I really tried for the rest of my life to try and make a change. But some people, their change is like from their family unit. It's just being them and just finding peace within their hearts and like just living in their space, in their head, in their house, in their job, their careers, as a mother, as a father, whatever it is, as a friend, just being able to just show up in life, just feeling very peaceful and calm within yourself. But the key is to really not understand the grief that we're experiencing. But when grief starts to show you, do you know who you are? Do you know why you're having all of these physical illnesses or diseases or effects? Do you know why now, your life is kind of perhaps going further downhill? Why everything just felt like, it was the end of my life, or it ruined my life, or, why relationships might be really difficult for you afterwards, or friendships. Why everything really changes afterwards is because it is so multifaceted, and we're multidimensional beings, and we really do start to look at the whole world completely differently. And sometimes, when it's created that much pain, it also creates that much growth, right? So we really need to grow as much as the pain has taken us. And so when we're at that very rock bottom, sometimes it's like a really, really, really big climb to get back up. And that big climb doesn't just come with, I'll go and talk about this. Talking, unfortunately, when you've gone through that much heaviness and that much trauma, isn't going to cut the mustard. And, until you've actually tried to work in all these other areas of your life, you might not realize that, even though it might be something that's so powerful and it feels like it's a first step and it's really bringing you comfort and home and everything, bringing the sense of home back into your body. There is so much more that goes into it for a lot of us that really have, if we're asking those big questions about ourselves. And so, you might see a lot of things. Someone said to me yesterday, what you do is quite different to an ordinary approach. And I forget that sometimes, because this has been my only approach for the longest time. I said, like, I did 6 months of conventional healing, and I walked away from it. So I don't really feel like it's the first thing on my mind. And she said, this is something that a lot of people aren't going to understand, and they probably don't quite get it, what it is that you do and why you talk about energy and healing and things and inner child work and all of the stuff that I mentioned before so much. But this is why. And maybe that resonates with you, and perhaps some of it doesn't. But this is like 38 minutes long, so it definitely wasn't going to fit into a caption. So another thing as well, I just saw, I wrote some little notes here, was soul retrieval. When we lose someone that we love, it's quite common that we'll say a part of me died too, because it's the truth, right? You feel like a part of you really did die too. And parts of our soul gets left not only in lost relationships or friendships with people, all through maybe like quite difficult times in our life, but at times like this, majorly, our soul completely can shatter. And so when there's these parts of us, we're feeling like we're very gappy, like we're not very whole, we're not feeling that ourselves and this full wholeness feeling. When we become to feel whole, it's because we accept all of that shadow side. We accept all of that, because each of us have the capacity to be quite awful as well. Under the right conditions, us as humans can be absolutely anything. And so when we call back all of these lost parts of ourselves, we do start to become quite whole. If someone said to me now, you're this or you're that, or you're, I don't know, you're horrible, whatever, I'm quite untouchable now, because I just think, well, you don't really know that about me, because actually this is what you're saying about yourself. But also, they can't touch me, because I could be like, yeah, you're right, I can be like that, or I am like this, because I know, because I've already done the work. Someone can't tell me about me. I already know me. But I didn't know me before I did all of this work. So when we do soul retrieval as well, we're really calling back parts of our soul that we lost and that we left behind. And it's really normal that we do that when we unconsciously do that when we've lost someone. So we also become very, very whole through that as well. These kind of healing journeys, they're not for the faint-hearted. They are really, really hard work. since moving back to England, I've really had to use so much more, so many more of my practices daily, and really like turn them up a notch, because my environment's not as fulfilling as it was. But I can't control that so much right now, because I don't have to, we shouldn't have to try and find all of that comfort just from our environment. You know, it comes from within. So I'm learning that now when it's raining outside and I don't feel like I have, you know, much motivation. It's like, well, I really have to do that inner work that I talk about so much, because right now I need it more than I did when I was waking up on the beach every day. So yeah, I hope that helps and gives a better understanding, how, you know, how this kind of trauma can really call out for a lot of change and a lot of understanding about ourselves. Because when you look back in history, you know, you can always trace everything and you can web everything together. You know, you'll see the breadcrumbs behind you and then how you got built to this point now. And that's how I can look at my brother's passing. And looking at his passing as something that's so important to me is like a fuel for me as well. And this is why I am so strong on a lot of this mental and emotional health being healed naturally, because I've seen the other side, and it's not a side that I want to go down. It's not a side that I believe in. And then we can, it's different, like when you can look back and make sense and think, okay, now I understand. But now what? You want to make change so that the future, you know, we don't have to go through all of these like rocky emotions and have them keep beating us down all the time. Because this is life, right? Like once you've been through something heavily traumatic or suicide loss, it doesn't mean to say that something bad isn't going to happen to us again. I thought I was so protected after Jack passed away. I thought, oh, well, you know, Jack's passed away now, nothing else bad can happen to me. And that doesn't work like that. You know, things bad still can happen. Never as bad as that. But things do still continue to happen. And so it's really important to have that toolkit in place where it's like, there's not much I can control about shit happening in the world, but I can control how I deal with it and how I experience it and how I work with that. And so, you know, now as well, you become quite invincible when other things are happening externally, because you know the truth, you see through things, you are so aligned with your higher self, you've had this wake-up call. You can also connect with others that are in spirit, like your loved ones, to really get all of the information, the comfort, the love, the knowledge, the wisdom from your ancestors even that you need for you going forward. So it really is like this whole encompassing thing that goes far beyond grief counselling, way deeper than grief counselling. I mean, grief counselling is like here, and then you have all of the inner work and everything else, and all the other stuff that comes from that is here. So it's a big job, but it is life-changing, completely life-changing. Anyways, I'm gonna leave that there.